Okay, so welcome to TntConnect Basics. This is the first part of a three-part webinar. Before we get started, I just want to give a little bit of information about Zoom so that if you're not unfamiliar with it, you'll know how to use it going forward. We cannot see or hear you during today's webinar, so if you do have questions, if you go ahead and place those questions into the chat box, Michelle Foster, who's one of our PD coaches, will be monitoring that chat, and she'll make sure that I get all of your questions. You don't need to wait till the end or wait for a special Q&A period. You can just ask your questions throughout the webinar as we're going along, as you think of them. My name is Jen Woodrum. I'm a PD coach as well. I'm in Dallas, Texas. Been a coach for about 5 years. And again, I said Michelle Foster is also with us in this webinar and is helping to facilitate questions and that sort of thing. If you have any questions about Zoom or if your audio is not working, go ahead and place those in the chat as well, and we'll try to help you out. We will send out a survey, a recording of today's webinar, and an FAQ, some FAQ information later this week. Probably not today, but you'll definitely have it by Friday. So if you want to share this or watch it again, you'll always have access to that information. If you're in full screen mode and you find that my video is floating in your upper right-hand corner, I know it won't look like that for everybody, but if that's what you're experiencing, I will probably refer to that portion of the screen at some point during today's webinar. If you left-click on that video, you can drag it around or move it to a different place on your screen. If you just want the video to not be there at all, you can click on the little minus sign, and that will minimize the video so that you don't have to see me if you find that to be distracting. Again, if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, go ahead and place those in the chat, and we'll try to address them as they come up. Okay. Before we go over to TntConnect, I just wanted to kind of take a look at TntConnect's website. If you put TntConnect into Google browser and search, it'll bring up their website as one of the top finds. And when you go to their download page, so if you haven't already downloaded TntConnect, this is where you'd go to do that. Do note that there's a different download for Windows and for Mac. So make sure you're downloading the program that's going to be most beneficial to you. I do download the beta versions. I've not encountered any problems in doing that. Feel free to not do that if you're uncomfortable with betas. And I also wanted to take a quick look at the resource website that you registered on. And I just wanted to point out again that there's these read more links. And if you go to each read more link, it's going to have resources that are relevant to the webinar that you're attending. Okay, so if you go in here, you'll see here's the FAQs. There's an outline if you want to print out an outline of the content that we're going to be covering today. This will help you get your Excel sheet ready for import. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So there's some workbooks, learning objectives for today. So there's lots of things, and there's these sorts of resources for each of the 3 webinars. So you see intermediate and tips and tricks right here as well. So all of these resources are available to you all the time from the registration page. Again, before we go over to TNT, as you're thinking about the download, so when you download the program, you're going to end up with a database. If you're not seeing my TntConnect right now, please let me know. Sometimes screen share gets kind of mixed up. But once you download TntConnect, you're going to have to import contacts from somewhere. So you will either import from an Excel sheet. Some people do bring in contacts one at a time, so you could type them in, and I'll show you how to do that as well. What I want you to be aware of is you actually have to create a database with TntConnect before you're able to import your Excel sheet into the program. And so I've had a couple of people say, created my Excel sheet, but TNT keeps asking if I want to create a new database. You do have to create the new database before you can import the Excel sheet. Okay, so that's a really important step that you don't want to miss. I know I'm not going over how to set up the account today, but it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the prompts that come up, and you should be able to follow that pretty easily. This is how you would want to set up your Excel sheet to import your contacts into the database. Again, the reason that we encourage people to create the Excel sheet instead of doing it one by one is because it just saves a lot of time. Okay, so I'll show you how to do one by one here in a moment. But if you have 100 people you need to put in, or 10 people that you need to put in, all at one time, the Excel sheet is really the best way to go. Again, you can set it up quickly. It's easier to see what information for each person you're missing. And then, and it just puts it all in there all at once. Now, you do want to use the same column names that you see at the top of my screen here. You don't need to write all of this down or take a screenshot or anything like that. This is included in the FAQs that I just referred to back on this webpage. So if you go over to the FAQs or you go to the Excel preparation, okay, these examples are all right here. There's even a video tutorial specifically on how to set this up, okay? So that information is there for you. But we want to have these title names because there's a one-on-one correlation with the data fields that are in TntConnect. So it's going to make for the smoothest import process if you use these field names. Also notice that it says to remember to save your file as a CSV file as opposed to an Excel worksheet or something else. TntConnect will only accept the CSV for the import. So make sure that you're doing that as well. And then another thing is that you don't have to have all of these names, these column names. So if you're not worried about the title or the spouse title, it is okay to go ahead and leave that off, and you'll still have that nice one-on-one correlation when you import. Okay, so you only do have to include the information that is relevant to what you're trying to track for your partners. Okay, so once you have all of that, you can go over to TNT, got your database set up, and then you're going to import those contacts in. In order to import the contacts in, you want to go to File and go down to Import, and then do Import Contacts from Text. When you do that, it's going to allow you to go to your file management system, and you'll be able to import the CSV file that you've created. You'll notice that it says Import Contacts from Outlook. I typically don't encourage people to use that unless they're very familiar with Outlook's contact address book. The reason for that is because Outlook tends to save all the email addresses that you've ever sent to. So I've had somebody use this and they ended up with 3,000 contacts in their database, and really only about 200 of those were relevant to what he was trying to do. So I would recommend exporting your Outlook contacts into an Excel sheet first and making whatever edits you need to make before bringing them into TntConnect. It's going to be a lot faster to delete them from an Excel sheet than it would be from the database itself. So you can do it that way. You can also add one contact at a time. So maybe you went to the church and you have 2 new people that you want to add. So maybe this is the fastest way to do that. So you just click New Contact, and you'll see all the information that becomes available to you to fill out for that person. You just click OK, and that would save that individual contact record. We're going to kind of go over this whole screen. So I'm going to take you kind of step by step through what each thing is and how it works, what information it's trying to give you. One thing when you first go into TNT before you do your import, you will notice that you have your own contact card set up here. A lot of people want to delete that right away. I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you keep it for now, and we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, I think next week actually, how you might use this contact card to your benefit if you're using TNT to set up your schedule or a task list or anything like that. It could actually be beneficial. You can delete it if you want, but I would go ahead and keep it for now just in case it's something that you think will be useful for you. Before we kind of take a look at this screen, I want to tell you about something called what TNT likes to call the magic F1 key. And what that is if you use no matter where you're at in TNT. Okay? So if I were to go into the lookup and say lookup by field, which I'm going to talk about this feature in a couple of weeks. If I were to open up this dialog box and then hit my F1 key while connected to the internet, and it would open up a browser screen so I can show you. If I hit F1, it's going to open up a browser screen. It goes to TNT's website, and it's going to show me a help screen based on what I was looking at. So that's a really fast way to get help inside of TntConnect. If you're in a window and you don't know what to do next, or you need some more information, hit that F1 key and you'll get some more help really fast that way. Some other shortcut keys on your keyboard that you can use with TntConnect is F2 and F3. So this is really mostly if you're working with a smaller computer screen and you want your database this portion of the database to take up more space or to become a little bit bigger. If you'll look over to this far left, you'll see this group of buttons, and you'll see my contact list. If I hit F2, it makes those buttons go away, and hitting it again brings it back. So they're toggle switches, basically. If I hit F3, it makes my contact list go away and come back. So again, it's just if you need this screen to be a little bit bigger so that you can view it easier. You can also hit the F12 key on your keyboard, and that makes this address portion a lot bigger if you're trying to copy it down or make a phone call. Okay, so those are just some interesting keystrokes that TNT has available. Making sure I have everything. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is once you've imported your addresses, or as you're importing financial data into TNT, which again I'll show you how to do a little bit later today, you might notice that some of your addresses turn this bold orange color, and you'll see it's at the top of the screen as well. If you notice that some of your addresses have become a bold orange, what that's trying to indicate to you is that the address that Unity has is not the same as the address that you already have in your database. And so it's indicating to you there's some conflict in data going on. So the way that you can look that up is if you have, I have 20 contacts, it's not a big deal for me to scroll through and check each of them to see if they're orange. But if you have 200 contacts, you're not going to want to do that. So in order to find all of the orange contacts that you might have in your contact list, if you go to lookup and you go to this unreviewed account information, and then just say, okay, I'm going to cover all the details of this in a couple of weeks. If you just go ahead and click OK for now, it's going to pull up all of your orange addresses. Okay. And then the way that you fix those is you click on the orange address, and it'll ask if you want to accept or ignore. If you click accept, it's going to take you to this next screen. And it's going to say, I'm going to use this address and overwrite what you already have here. Is that what you want to do? If it is, you click this button. If not, click cancel. And then TNT makes a record of that information for you. Okay, so it'll log a history item, which we'll talk more about next week. But it'll automatically log a history item for you to show you that that address has changed and to keep a record of the old address. So if you realize in a couple hours or a couple of days, I actually should have kept the older address, then you'll still have record of where that is, so it doesn't delete that data from the database completely. Two things I want to point out here. The first is you see that currently I'm not seeing all of my contacts in this contact column. What's important about that, I'm seeing 5 of my contacts, so there's a filter on top of it. I have made myself panic many, many times by doing this incorrectly. Okay, so what made sense to me is I want the filter to go away so I can see all my contacts again. So what I would often do is click this X button to try to make it go away, but that doesn't work. It makes your contacts go away instead. Okay, and that made me panic the first time because I didn't know how to get them back. But remember at the beginning of the session, I told you about the F3 key. The F3 key will bring your contacts back, or you can also use this icon right here, and this icon will toggle that off and on as well. Now, what's important to notice is that it didn't remove the filter still, so I still can only see 5 of my contacts. So the way that you can see all of your contacts again, when there's a filter on top of it, is by clicking the filter icon. Okay, I almost guarantee that you're going to do this at least once. I probably do it almost every time I come in here. Okay, it's just a handy thing to know as you start working with TNT. So now we're going to kind of take a look around the rest of the screen. We've already looked at the new contact button. You have the edit contact button, so it's going to bring up the same information that you saw on new contact. It's just going to bring it up for the person that you happen to be clicked on. Okay, so if I'm on Beast and Bell and I want to edit something, I can click edit contact and it's going to show me all that information. Going down a little bit, you'll see the address information. The way that you get address information to appear up here is obviously to put it down here. But then it's also the preferred, what you have marked in your database is the preferred information. So you'll see I have 2 different addresses here, and only the Applewood is appearing up here at the top. And the reason this one is the one that it appears is because this is the one that has the black dot. Okay, so that black dot is showing that this address is preferred for me right now. That is important in several different areas of TntConnect. One, it's important because it causes the address to appear up here. So if I were to hit F12, that's the address that gets blown up for me as I'm working on envelopes and things like that. Another reason it's important is if you sync with MailChimp. So if you sync with MailChimp and you bring your physical address over for some reason, not everybody does that, but if you do for some reason, it's going to pull the address that you have marked as preferred. Another reason it's important is if you choose to create envelopes or labels, when you go to do your mail merge, it's going to pull the address that you have marked as preferred and not the other one. Okay, so that dot is pretty important. The way you get that dot to move from one address to the other is by double clicking in the address box. So when I double clicked, it pulled up this new dialog box, and you'll see that it has this box, a checkbox right here that says mailing. If I click on that and say OK, it moved the black dot down. So now this business address is the one that's preferred, and you can tell that by the address up here has changed. Okay. And I'll explore this bottom section a little bit more in a minute. But coming back up here to the top, you'll also see that there's a phone number. Sometimes an email address will occur up here. Okay, so if I scroll down a little bit, you can see the email addresses. But again, it's the one that has the black dots. And so I'll go over how to move those black dots around in this area when we get there. You'll notice that the phone number is clickable. There is a way for you to connect your database to Skype so that if you click on that phone number, Skype's going to open up for you to make your phone call. Another thing that happens when you click on that is it creates a history dialog. So your log items here, it automatically brings that up so that you can create an item as you're making the phone call. So it's just kind of a little bit of a shortcut. If you click on the email addresses, it'll of course create an empty blank email based in the program that you have marked as your default program on your computer. Okay, so like on my computer, I use Outlook as my default email program. So if I click on this button, it's going to open it up in Outlook. If you have Gmail set as your default, then it'll open up in Gmail. But again, that's on your computer. It's a computer setting, not a TntConnect setting. Moving over to the right, you'll see $100 monthly. So this is what this person has pledged. And I'll show you where to set some of these things a little bit later. But this is just letting you know this is what the person has promised. They are current. So you'll see all these dots on the left side. There's green, yellow, and red, and there's light blue. There's also some purples. I'll go over that in a little bit more detail when we get to the financial information, but those dots are letting you know whether or not the partner is up to date in their giving. The average, so they've partnered, they've promised $100 monthly, but on average, they actually give $109 a month. And then this organization account, that number will appear when you link your financial account, your financial information with Unity. One thing I want to say, kind of at this point, just so that I don't forget, Touchpoints sent out an email a few weeks ago that was kind of warning members, hey, TNT is about to make some changes. We haven't decided what we're going to do about that yet. Actually, that wasn't from Touchpoints, that was from TNT themselves. That change is going to happen by the end of the year, but our IT department is also going to make a change to make sure that we keep continuing to be able to use TntConnect. So TntConnect is still going to be usable next year. TntConnect is not going away from Wycliffe USA. So if you've heard that or if you've been told that, that is misinformation. TntConnect will still be usable after the end of this year. Okay, so that's my little plug for that. Moving down the screen a little bit, you see there's a new tasks window. This is linked to this tasks, which I'm going to go over how to use next week. But as you populate tasks in your database, they also show up here, just for easy viewing. Notes goes with this Notes tab here. I've seen people use this for different things. Some people will put children's birth dates. Some people will put different scripture verses there, or something that they want to remember about this partner that doesn't have a place to put it somewhere else in the database. So there is a place to put other birthdays and anniversaries, but if you want things beyond what's available, this is a place that you can keep that, and then it'll show up here at the top. The next is the TNT phase. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the TNT tab, because those two are linked. So don't worry about that right now. I do want to talk about the church name because this was another area that was not self-evident to me. When you first had your database, you find something about church. So here's a person without a church. And initially, you're not going to have any churches on your church drop-down list. It's just going to be blank. The way you add church is you just type the name of the church in here. Okay, so New Church of Texas. Okay, now if I go, and you don't click save, you don't do anything else. If you go to another record, and I go and look at what churches are available, you'll see New Church of Texas is now one of the options. So it adds it just by you typing it in there and moving on. Okay. The next thing is we are going to go ahead and drop down into the address tab. So on the address tab, again, you can double click on any of these boxes to make edits. Okay, so if I double click, you see it pulled up the address information. You can mark it as preferred. If you uncheck this, it just puts a red line through it. And then you're just telling TNT this address is not valid. And I also don't have another address to update you with right now. Okay. So you can click OK. Again, you can also edit that by clicking this edit contact up here. That'll also give you the ability to edit. You can also click on this little pencil and it'll bring up that dialog box. So there's a variety of ways that you can go about editing your address information. With telephone, you do the exact same thing. You just double click into that dialog box and it'll open up all the different options you have for telephone numbers. First thing to notice is that there's a little arrow next to each name, as well as to the home phone number. If you click on that, it gives you a whole bunch of other options for phone numbers. The way that you mark a phone number preferred is with this little box on the right. And you'll notice that you can only have one preferred phone number. Whichever one you mark as preferred, that's the number that's going to appear at the top of your screen. The other thing is that there's this little checkbox, and this checkbox just means that the phone number is valid. So again, if I uncheck it, it's going to turn it red. If I check it, it'll make it valid again. So if it's red, it won't be clickable in your database. So just click OK. And it's the same thing with the email and web. You'll see that there's a whole bunch of different options. So if I click on the down arrow next to somebody's name, it's going to give you all these different things that you can store in TntConnect. So one of the caveats that I like to talk about here is that I don't really encourage people to spend all their time updating all of these fields. So like with Facebook, for example, is it really going to be beneficial for you to put somebody's Facebook page here? Well, can you find it just as easy by going over to Facebook and clicking on the profile? Okay, if this is something that will really help your PD and really shorten down your search time, then go ahead and fill it in. But be careful that you're not just doing this busy work to avoid other PD tasks. Okay, we see that quite a bit, maybe more than you would think. And so if you use Twitter all the time or you use Facebook all the time, it's probably not going to be really beneficial for you to spend 2 hours going to everybody's Facebook page and plugging that information in. You can, but it's probably not really going to help you in the long run. Looking at the email addresses, you can have more than one preferred email address. Okay, so if I were to put in, okay, so now there's another email address. I can choose both of these as preferred. Now again, this is really, really important for MailChimp. MailChimp is only going to grab the email addresses that you have marked as preferred. So if you don't mark the email addresses, they're not going to grab them when you link those two accounts together. So be careful about that. Right. And again, marking the preferred also pulls them up to the top of the screen here. The final box is the greetings box. If you double click on that, you're really seeing the exact same screen that you saw when you clicked on edit contact at the top. Right? So this should be almost exactly the same. What I want to look at is the address block and the greetings. The address block, you might want to change the name on the address block. The benefit of doing it here is that if you're printing labels or if you're printing envelopes and the Unity information says Bob and Janet, but you actually call them Bill and Jan, you might want to change their names that are going out to their addresses while not changing this information so that it stays linked to Unity properly. Okay, so it just gives you a way to personalize the information a little bit without affecting the way that it updates its donor information. Same thing with the greetings block. You'll see there's some different information here. So if you're going to use mail merge to write letters, or you're going to use mail merge to do envelope, well, this isn't really for envelopes, but if you're going to move these fields over into MailChimp, which you can do, you're probably going to want to go through and make some edits in here to make sure you have the names that people are typically called as opposed to what's on their billing accounts. Okay. So that's this tab. That's really all there is to this tab. The next tab we're going to look at is the TNT tab. So the TNT tab is where you keep all your financial information. So there are a couple of ways to get your financial information from Unity into Donor Manager. Right now, I need you to hear this, right now, you cannot use the gift input button as a Wycliffe USA member. Okay, so if you're a Wycliffe USA member, you will not find Wycliffe USA in the gift input button. That will change by the end of the year, and that will be announced in Touchpoints. Okay. Also, sometimes next year, this is going to be the only way that you can input gifts into TntConnect, but right now you cannot use it. Okay? So it's coming, but not yet. So for now, what you want to do is you want to go over to Unity. Okay, so if we go over to Unity and you go to staff resources, my partner's donation history, and scroll down, you'll see right here underneath the dates, there's a download history TntConnect. That's where you want to get your donor information from. So if you're doing this for the first time and you want to go back to 2006, you want to change these dates, click submit, so you get all the financial information, and then download your TntConnect history. Okay, so when you download this, oh, I didn't want to do that. You'll get this document. If you have TNT open, so if the TNT program is already open just like this, once you download this, you can double click on it and it's automatically going to open up in the TNT. Okay. If you don't double click on it, you can also go to Tools and go down to Update Donor Gift Info from File, and that's going to let you look for the file on your computer. Okay, so mine always goes to my desktop. So I just select my donations and click Open. I'm not going to demonstrate this right now because I don't want that information in this account. But it will bring the contacts in. If you don't already have the contacts here, it'll add them to your database. If you do already have them here, especially that first time you import, you really want to make sure that you read the prompts that come up. The prompts that come up are going to say, hey, we have this donor information coming in. Does it match a contact that's already in the database? If it does, you want to click yes. You want to click the contact that it matches, click yes, and that way you don't end up with duplicate records. Okay, so don't click through that real fast. Make sure you go ahead and pay attention to what you're putting in there. Okay. Once you have your donor information in, you'll see that there's several different things that happen. One of the things is you're going to start seeing these colored dots that I kind of referred to before. So if you see a green dot, it means that that partner is up to date in their promise giving. So if they promise $100 a month, they are up to date in giving $100 a month. If you see a yellow dot, that means that they've lapsed at least 1 month, and you need to start kind of paying attention. They partnered for $100 a month, but they skipped a month. Okay. The red dot means that they've skipped at least 2 months, and you probably need to start taking action. Not probably, you do need to start taking action. Okay, so this is one of the features that I really like about TNT, is that you have this visual cue that you need to do something about your partnership. Too many times I've heard stories of missionaries who didn't keep up with their TNT database or their donor manager database and didn't realize a partner hadn't been giving for over a year. And when that big gap of time happens, it is now really awkward for you to reach out to that partner, because that partner is going to receive that as, you didn't even notice that I quit giving. Obviously, you didn't need that money. Okay, that can be the message that you're sending to that partner. So it's important to keep up to date with this database so that you can see, oh, it turned red. I need to call them. I need to email them and see what's going on. A lot of times it has, at least for me, a lot of times the red dot has meant I changed my credit card information or my credit card expired. or I moved, my address information is no longer correct. And they don't realize that they've quit giving. And as soon as I make that call, they call into Wycliffe, they get their information changed, and the giving continues. So use these dots as a way to monitor the financial status of your partners. Okay. Now, again, I only have 20, so I can see in a quick glance who has red dots and who doesn't. If you have 200 contacts, you'd have to scroll to see all of your dots. So to prevent you from having to do that, what you can do is go to Tools and go to this Pledge Fulfillment Report. Okay, when you go to Pledge Fulfillment Report, it brings up all the dots for you. So this light blue means that you've told TNT that somebody has promised to financially partner, but they haven't actually given yet. They haven't pulled any gifts from Unity yet. And so that's what that light blue is talking about. Again, the green is they're up to date. Yellow is 30 to 60 days late, and red is more than 60 days late. Okay, so that's actually 3 months. You're starting to look at 3 months late. So you do want to make sure that you're keeping record of this. If you click look up contacts next to any of these categories, it's going to bring up everybody in that category. So if I want to look up all my red dots so I can make phone calls or do emails, click that button, and now it filters all the people with red dots. So that's a nice, and again, remember you want to use the filter icon to bring your contacts back. Okay. So looking at the TNT screen, the first thing you see is TNT phase. This TNT phase is the exact same TNT phase that's up here. TNT typically, I feel like I've gotten feedback that this isn't consistent, but typically, once you've imported information from TNT, if somebody has given a financial gift, TNT should automatically change this to partner financial. Apparently, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time, it should. But there are some other categories. So if you want to mark your prayer partners this way, you can do so. If you're in an active PD stage, maybe you want to mark the people who you need to call for an appointment or that you need to schedule, call for a decision. If you use these, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to show you how to do a search, and you'll be able to look up all the partners that you've marked with these different categories. So if I want to see all my financial partners, I would be able to do a lookup and pull up all my financial partners. So it can be a really helpful field to have filled out. The next field is Next Ask. I have never used this field. The reason that I don't use this field is because I include my Next Ask as one of my tasks instead, just because that seems easier to me. It seems easier to clear and all that kind of stuff. So I just have never used it. Feel free to do so if that would be beneficial to you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Jen, we had one asking if you could show again how to input from Unity. They know how to get it from Unity, but once it's downloaded, you're supposed to double click on something and then they lost you.
Okay. Yeah, so like for me, when I downloaded my donor information, it showed up down here at the bottom of my screen. If I double click on that file, it's going to open up in TntConnect. Or say you have, like I saved this file on my desktop. If I went to my desktop and double clicked on the document, it would try to open it up in TntConnect if TntConnect was open. To me, that's the easiest way to do it, is just by double clicking on the document. But if that doesn't work for you for whatever reason, you can also go into TNT and go to Tools and go down to Update Donor Gift Info from File. And that will let you pull the file off of your computer. Okay, so there's 2 different ways to do that right now. Again, next year you're going to be able to start using this gift input button. So eventually this will be easier. But for now, those are the 2 ways to go about doing that. The next area on the screen is the pledge. So the checkbox means they are currently giving right now. If you don't have that checked, when you go to run reports or you go to look at the analysis screen, it's not going to count this gift as one of the people that are giving to you. Even if they're giving, okay, even if this is full of 75s, if this is not checked, it will not show up in the reports. Okay, so it is really important to have that checkbox. Here you just type in the amount. So, if I went to my own, this is what a new contact would look like. I would change this, just type in the number. Okay, so just using your keyboard, type in the number. And then you want to select, is this gift monthly? Is it bi-monthly? Is it annual? And telling TNT that information does two things. One, it informs what color the dot ought to be based on giving information. And the second is it's part of your analysis. So it's helpful to have that picked. Sending your newsletter, this checkbox means no. So if it's not checked, no, this person doesn't want to receive emails at all from me. Checking it says yes, they do want to receive email from me or my newsletters. So if, yes, they do want to receive my newsletters, and no, they don't. And this is how they want to receive it. Now, again, this is actually fairly important. If you do email with paper backup or email only, any of them with emails in it, MailChimp will grab that to pull it over when you sync the accounts. If you have paper only, MailChimp will completely ignore it. Okay, so keep that in mind. Also, if you don't have them selected as paper, it makes it more difficult to set up a mail merge. So if you're doing labels or if you're going to do envelopes, you do want to make sure that it has paper with email backup, paper only, or paper and email, or email with paper backup. You want to tell TNT that you are going to be sending paper newsletters to this person, probably at some point. When you set that, whatever you put here, it's going to put new symbols over here on the left. You'll see I have this little envelope. The envelope indicates that this person's preference is to receive my newsletter by mail. The @ sign is indicating this person wants to receive my newsletters by email. So that's what those two mean. If you have both of them, plus envelope plus the @ sign, it means that you chose this paper and email option. If you have one that's red, so here's a red @ sign, that means that you have told us that this person prefers to receive your newsletter by email, and this person's email is invalid, so they're not able to receive your newsletter. Okay, so that's what that means. Same with the envelope. If the envelope is red, it means this person prefers to receive the newsletter by mail, and you don't have a valid address for them. The arrow means that you selected, like in this case, it means I've selected paper with email backup. So this person prefers to receive paper. I don't have a valid address for them, so they're going to receive it by email. If this is helpful for you, then go ahead and pay attention to it. If this is just confusing and doesn't help, feel free to ignore it. It won't hurt anything. I just want to let you know what those symbols meant. Also, if you're inputting your contacts for the very first time, you can actually create columns to set this up instead of having to go contact by contact and check this box and contact by contact and setting their preference. What you can actually do is add these two columns. And again, this will be in the FAQs, but you can add these two columns to your Excel or CSV sheet. And true, the send newsletter true means it's going to check that box and tell TNT that yes, this person wants to receive my newsletter. And false means it's going to leave the box unchecked so that TNT thinks that person doesn't want to receive your newsletter. And I have all this coded in the FAQs too, so you don't have to remember what any of this means. But the +E means they want to receive it by email only. +E, -P. So these all mean different things. Okay? And again, I have a key code for you in the FAQ, so you know what each means. But it is faster for some people to set this up in their Excel sheet. One thing about this, if you're going to do this in an Excel sheet, is when you go to add the +E, Excel likes to turn it into a formula, this pound name. And the only way that I've seen to make that not happen is if you put an apostrophe before it. So if I do apostrophe and then do my +E, it doesn't change it over to that pound name sign. So that's the way you get around that if you decide to add this column to your Excel sheet. Okay? That has been extremely frustrating for a lot of people. Okay, so coming back to the screen, the next thing you'll see is region. Region works the same way as a church works. So there's not preset regions. And you only need to include regions if this is something that's going to be helpful for your PD. So, for example, 90% of my partnership development team is in St. Louis. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to use region because everybody's in the same place. However, lots of people I work with have PD teams that are spread out across the country. So they might have some people on the West Coast and some people on the East Coast. Well, now it makes sense to use regions because maybe I want to pull up the people I'm about to do a PD trip for. Okay. So if your partners are spread out like that, this might be a helpful tool for you to set up. Referred by, you'll see I have Peter Pan in there. I encourage people to use this field for advocates. So for example, I have an extremely small network when I first did PD. And so I had to have a lot of advocates who were introducing me to people I didn't know. And so if I went to a home meeting and all the couples there were not people I knew, but somebody my advocate introduced me to, but when I go to put those new people into my database, I also put that advocate so I know where I met that person. Okay, I know this person because Peter Pan introduced me to this person. So that can be really helpful as well. Set up pledge currencies. I've not ran into too many people who this is useful for because with Wycliffe USA, so I have a partner in Switzerland, but that partner gives to Wycliffe Switzerland, who gives to Wycliffe USA, and it still comes into my Wycliffe account. So I don't need to set up, and it's all in US dollars. So setting up a pledge currency doesn't make a difference to me. Setting up the newsletter language, I've seen this used for people who do have partners who speak a different language. So one of the people that I coached, she did an English version and a Spanish version. And so she would set this up so that she could easily find both groups of people. Okay. I know I'm not showing you how to do that, but if you just click on it, it's real clear on how to set it up. The next thing that you'll see are these 3 checkboxes. The first one says deceased. If somebody is a financial partner, it's better for you to mark them as deceased than it is to delete them from your account. When you mark them as deceased, they get this gray letter through them and the word deceased next to them. The reason that we encourage doing that as opposed to deleting the account altogether is because you lose all your financial information when you delete the account. So if you just mark it deceased, it won't include it in MailChimp, it won't include it in your labels or envelopes, it won't include it in your report, and you'll still keep your financial information. Now, some people have gotten frustrated that when one spouse dies, there's no way to really indicate that. And that's just the way it is. There is no way to indicate that one spouse has passed away while the other is still alive. You would just have to go in and you'd have to go to your address tab and remove the spouse who's passed away. Maybe you want to put that in your notes or something. But there is no way to indicate that one person has passed while the other remains alive. Okay.
Jen, we've just had a question come in.
Sure.
So this person has checked out the tools, update donor and gift from file as you showed. And then they got a dialog box that said you must be connected to the TntConnect community to import data sync files. How do they connect to the TntConnect community?
Okay. That would be probably going back to their website. You'll see up here it says sign in. And so you'll probably need to go ahead and create an account. You sign in with your Google email. And that should connect you to the TntConnect community. That was not a requirement in the past, so that's news to me. Thank you for sharing that. But that should let me know if that doesn't solve the problem, because then we'll need to figure out what's going on. But I suspect that's what they want you to do. Where they use that information, so to sort of allay any fears that you might have, TntConnect does not access your donor information. They don't collect their addresses. They don't collect email addresses. What they use the login information for is if you use their help community. So if you have a question and you go to their forums, they want you to be signed in so they know who to email when they answer your question. Okay. So as far as I'm aware of, that is the only way that they use your email, is so that they can respond to any questions that you might have. So looking back at the checkboxes, the direct deposit checkbox, again, doesn't really apply to Wycliffe USA. Maybe you have use for that. You're free to use it if it's beneficial, of course. Magazine, the way I've seen that used with Wycliffe is if you buy the Wycliffe calendars for your partners, Maybe you only buy it for financial partners, or maybe you only buy it for financial partners who give a certain amount. If you want to indicate that in your database, this is the way I think people do it the most efficiently. You can also create a group, which is something we'll talk about in the last webinar in 2 weeks. It's another way to set that up, but this is just a real simple, straightforward way to do it. The next part of the screen is the GIFs. Again, this will automatically populate when you upload your information from Unity. But you can also put in a manual gift. So say somebody gives you a gift card for your birthday, that's not really going to end up showing up on your Wycliffe records, but I still want to have record of it in my database. So if you wanted to include something like that, if you right-click and click Add a New Gift, you'll see you'll have the opportunity to add that in. So you can click this to choose which date you received the gift on, type in the amount of the gift received, ignore the campaign information, and then I would write a memo. So if you got a gift card, gift card for birthday, whatever other information you want about that. And then the other thing that you want to change is you want to change it to a personal gift. So when you change it to a personal gift, it does a couple of things. The first thing it does is it unchecks available on the web. If you leave available on the web checked, TNT is going to try to delete this gift every time you import from Unity. Because when you say it's available on the web, it thinks that it's going to bring it in from your import. And when it goes to do that import and it sees it's not there, it thinks this gift is a mistake and it's going to try to delete it. Now you can tell it, no, don't delete it, but it's going to ask you every single time unless you take off this available from the web option. Okay, once you uncheck that, it'll quit trying to delete your gift. The other thing checking a personal gift is it will put this little P next to it, so you know this isn't going to show up on my Wycliffe paperwork. It's not going to be assessed. It's not going to go into my taxes. This is just a personal gift. Okay. So that's how you do that. Going to the right of that portion of the screen, you'll see it's this chart. So it's by default it shows you 13 months. So it's just letting you see how this partner has given over the past year. You can increase the number of months you're looking at or decrease them. If you just want to look at the past 6 months or want to look at the past 2 years, you're able to change that. Typically leave mine at 13 months. That's just most relevant to me when I'm doing partnership development. Individual, if it's clicked on individual, it's always going to be looking at the person that you have highlighted blue. So I'm looking at their contact information, also looking at their financial information. And you can go over to current group. When you click current group, it's going to show your financial information for everybody who occurs here. So if you have a filter on top of this, maybe you filtered for your orange addresses, and those are the only contacts that are showing up there, that's the only financial information that would show up here. Okay, so current group, and you'll see current group in a couple of different places. So you see group actions up here. If I do a lookup, you can look up by group. It's always looking at this information here. This is your current group. I know I'm saying that over and over again, but it's really important. That's your current group. Okay? So if you're doing a group action, make sure the relevant people are in that column or it's not going to do what you want to do. Okay? There's also a down arrow next to individual so that you can switch from the visual graph or the chart to details. What I've seen this most helpful for is this current until. So if you have somebody who's giving annually or you have somebody who's giving biannually, bi-monthly, however, they're not giving quarterly, they're not giving every month. And you want to check up on their status. This is a quick way to do that. So if you have somebody who gives every 6 months, maybe you want to make sure that you give them a special phone call or a special email to make sure you're on their radar when you know that 6 month period is kind of coming up. This is just sort of a place where you can check and look how close you're getting to that. So that's really how I've seen this being used. And that's really all there is to the TNT screen. Okay, so we went over the address screen, we went over the TNT screen, we went over how to import GIFs from an Excel worksheet, or not from an Excel worksheet, import GIFs from Unity and import contacts from an Excel worksheet. Those are the main things that I planned to go over today. Next week, we're going to go over the task tab and the history tab in a lot more detail. And we'll go over a couple of other features of TNT as well. Again, all the sessions are recorded, so if you're not able to make the live session, please stay registered. A couple other things that we can look at today, because we have about 10 more minutes if there are no questions. And of course, if you have questions, go ahead and start asking them. Some other features that I know people have wanted to know about in the past in regards to TNT is how to back it up, how to back up the database. So to do that, you would go to File and Backup. One thing to know about TNT is that it does back up your database automatically under various conditions. So every time you close the database, it automatically creates a backup. It's like a save. Every time, for every hour that you have TNT open, it automatically creates a backup. If you do some sort of mass field change, which I know I didn't cover today, I'll cover mass field changes in 2 weeks. So if you do any sort of mass change in your database, it will also automatically create a backup, but you can also create a manual backup. So if you're feeling nervous about it, or there's some reason that you feel like you need to back it up before you do the next thing, if you click backup and just give it a name, and click OK, then now it saves to that backup. So if I want to restore, say I made some sort of error in my database, there's no way to undo it. So what I would do instead is go to restore and pull it from one of the databases, or pull it from one of the backups that I've created. Okay, so that's that. With Dropbox, so if you're using TntConnect on more than one computer, Dropbox is a good way to make that happen succinctly. If Dropbox is on both of the computers that you're using, it'll automatically pull the database from that, which is a nice option. So you don't have to save it on a USB drive and manually move it over. It just pulls straight from Dropbox. You would click on this button to set that up. If you don't currently use Dropbox or you haven't connected it yet, that's how you would connect your Dropbox account. It does try to catch conflicts, so there are some options that you can set with Dropbox. If you go into Help and go down to, nope, that's not true, Tools, and go down to Options, go to Tools, Options, and then Newsletters. No, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Go to Tools, Options, and then just this opening screen. At the very bottom, you'll see Prevent Multiple Users at the Same Time. If you have that checked, only one person can edit the database at a time. So the first user will be able to edit it. The next person who opens it on a different computer will only have read-only options. They won't be able to make any changes. And it's to try to prevent conflict in the data. One thing to be aware of if you do this is I've had people leave this open on their work computer and then try to go home and open it and work from it on their personal computer, and they can't because they're opening it the second time now and it's blocked. Okay, so if you leave this unchecked, you do have a chance that you can use it on multiple computers at the same time, or you can make edits from different computers at the same time. And Dropbox will still try to catch any conflicts that happen. So like right now, there's a green check mark on this. If there was a conflict in the data, that would turn into a red X, and you would click on it, and it would say, you've made this change here, you've made this change here, which one of these is right? So it's not going to automatically grab one, it's going to ask you first which one's correct. So there are safeguards still in place if you decide to uncheck that box. Okay. All right, that's all I had covered for today, so thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful for you today. Again, you'll receive a copy of the recording of today's webinar, as well as links to FAQs and things like that. Michelle has probably put the survey into the chat box. If you take a couple moments and just fill out that survey, constantly looking for ways to make our webinars better fit your needs. So please just take a few minutes to fill that out. And
there's another question in the chat, and I will grab the link.
Okay. Oh, you're not reading it? Hold on. I saw that you said we need to get our donors' contact into a spreadsheet before we import the names. But will gathering the download history TntConnect from Unity, will that document automatically allow one to input the names of any donors? Yeah, if you're only worried about your financial partners you've already given, then you only need to use the document from Unity. So if you pull that information in from Unity, it will go ahead and put all those donors into your database. There's an ongoing debate in the TNT community. Is it better the first time around to pull it in from Unity first or from the Excel sheet first? I think most people think it's better to do it from Unity the first time around and then add in your Excel sheet after that. It just seems to go smoother for people when they're trying to match their data. To delete a contact, I've had a couple of people ask that. If you go to contact and just delete contact, and it'll permanently delete it from your database. Again, I really would only do that if you don't have financial data from that person though. So if you have a person who's never given and they've indicated, I'm also not interested in receiving any updates, I don't want you to ask me, then that would probably be okay to delete. Or if you end up with a duplicate on accident. We have about 4 more minutes, so if you have any other questions, feel free to ask.